5 seconds. Your mics are hot. You're live.
Good evening, everyone. This is the Town of Auburn Fire Station Building Committee meeting for June 16th, 2025, 6 p.m. Calling to order. Our first item on the agenda is the review of the last meeting minutes from June 2nd. Any comments, questions?
I have one comment. I would like to make a motion to amend the line right above approved that says next meeting is scheduled for June 11th, 2025 at 6 p.m. to say June 16th. It's listed twice on the minutes, once correct and once incorrect.
I did
Oh,
fix
you
that.
did? Okay.
I sent an email back out that I did fix that. Somebody else brought that up to me, so I did
Okay.
fix that before. Thank you. But I did fix that one on this copy.
Was that the
It's like-
second email? Because I didn't have an attachment on the second email.
It was the second email, yeah. Because I sent it the first time, and then Kevin sent me a note that they were wrong. So I fixed it, and I replied to everybody that I did fix it, so.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
So you're withdrawing that then?
Yes, it's already been done.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. Take a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second? A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Those are approved. Next item up is the contract amendment approvals. Did we get, Chief, I didn't see any correspondence
So
that
I
those
can
came?
talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
So both Tecton and Left Field put proposals together. Both Matt and I worked closely together on his submission and our submission, and we got it over to the chief for review. Both of them are under the budget that we submitted for the overall project. It was conclusive of all of the disciplines and responsibilities to move from conceptual design right out through closeout. We broke it down by each of those entities. Right now, it's with the town administrator. It's with the town manager right now, just for review. And at that point, we'll bring it back to you once she's okay with the content of it, and then you guys can look it through.
Okay.
All right? We're not stopping, though.
All right. So nothing else to do on that one right now. Okay. So moving on to Tecton. You got an update on floor plans?
All right.
Matt?
So, when we were going through this design process, I promised increased efficiency as we went through this. So, we've provided that today. Plan was reviewed roughly. We put some updates to the plan together, trying to reduce square footage, increase the floor plan efficiencies. Hopefully, build in some protections within the budget by doing so, without reducing any of the program. Shared that with the fire department last week. Thursday, we got some comments back from the chief. We were able to quickly incorporate those. So I had about 5 minutes before to talk to the deputy chief and review those with him. So he's the only one that's actually seen it so far. So I'll just walk you through the changes once I get in the presentation mode here. Anyway, I'll zoom in. So from the bottom half of the building here, we reorganized some of the rooms off of the training room just to increase usability. Before, the furniture storage room was sort of back here, and it was accessed back here. And the AV room was kind of buried. So we reorganized the kitchen to more of a galley style, and then the furniture storage would flow right through there. So it's a little bit more workable for bringing in tables and chairs and things like that to store them. And then the AV room is a little bit more prominent in the front so that there'd be more of a view to the screens and things like that. It'd be a little bit more functional. We also eliminated one of the bathrooms in the fitness room, gave them a little bit, it wasn't needed. In talking with the department, it didn't seem necessary. One was sufficient. So we reduced that down to one and got a little bit more usable square footage out of the gym with that. The biggest move was around the administrative wing and then upstairs as well. So previously we had a second corridor that was running up here that had a couple of bathrooms, some storage rooms, and an IT room adjacent to it. in looking at the building and talking to our engineers, the IT room was a little undersized. We needed a little bit more space for that. And that second corridor was just eating up square footage that we could use elsewhere. So we actually took the conference room up, and additionally, the fire department had some comments that the lieutenant and captain, they wanted closer on the response route to the bay floors as well. So they were down here on the window, on the exterior wall previously. So we took the conference room that was originally right here, and we moved it into the back area where the restrooms were, moved the two restrooms here so that they're more centrally located within the office space, moved the captain and lieutenant back here, and then made a larger IT room in some of the leftover space between the meeting room and the deputy chief's office. From there, we actually were able to reorganize the decon area, maintaining all the equipment and lockers that was going in there, and create a second transition zone so that any of the firefighters that are working within the admin area will now have a separated straight shot right into the bays. So it improves their ability to respond, but also gives them a safer way to respond as well. So this being the primary transition zone, this mutual aid sort of day room rest area now isn't necessarily a combined transition zone per se. So that we sort of take that responsibility of this space and move it over. What this actually allowed us to do was take this entire block of space and shift it north by about 5 feet. So it's representative of about 415 square feet on the ground floor. None of the plan beyond that changed on the ground floor. Up above, if you recall, we initially had a corridor running through this back space. So as you come up this main stair here, there was a corridor and then a wall, and then it was the day room, dining room, and kitchen. And then there was sort of an L-shaped section of the ancillary spaces that support that with the supply closet and housekeeping. What we actually did is shifted that to the north by about 5 feet as well and eliminated that corridor and made it part of the day room space. That allowed us to then take the entire block of space and also move it north 5 feet, also reducing the square footage of this floor plate by 415 square feet. So effectively with those two moves, we reduced the entire gross square footage of the building by 830 square feet. So a significant reduction in square footage with that, without reducing any of the program and creating a more efficient floor plan for their use during the day as well as their response. With that, I'll take any questions on the plan changes.
Can you go back to the first floor, please?
Sure.
On the bottom right, that corridor, yeah, right there. You think you need an exit door to come out?
No, yeah, because we have two ways here and here that we don't have a dead end corridor situation there.
Okay.
So we have sufficient egress.
So that maybe a window to line. Does that corridor align with the second floor?
It does. So that'd be a nice window on the end of those to bring some natural light in, because having the corridors completely surrounded by program space doesn't really allow for that. So that allows us to get some natural light in deeper to the building.
Matt, does this change allow like future flexibility with the department, or is that going to be strictly limited to our option on the second floor?
Yeah, there's still a little bit of extra space within some of these rooms. The spaces themselves are sort of programmed for a little bit of growth.
Okay.
Yep.
And then does this change the exterior now? Are we stepping in if we're shifting that north in further?
Yeah. So actually, I think there we go. So in this rendering here, so basically this mass is just shifted in 5 feet. So we'll redesign this facade here because the pilasters here, the proportions aren't going to work because that's going to get shrunk down a little bit. But effectively, this piece will just shift over. So at the next meeting, we should have updated renderings to show you what that change looks like. But effectively, it'll look more or less the same.
There may be some other architectural features that you're gonna probably implement with that, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On the second floor, So we've got the back, well, the left and the right stairwells, I guess, are the two access points. So,
In a pool.
we didn't have access on the bunk corridor anyway from downstairs, did we?
No.
Okay.
No, that doesn't change. I would also add that originally the fire pole was over here, which was requiring you to sort of jog around a couple of turns to access it. We're able to move that over here, so now it's a straight shot from the bunk rooms. It does create a thing where the mechanical room will get broken up into two spaces, but if one is sort of the hot water side and the other one is more of the air handling side or heat pump side, then it shouldn't be too much of an issue. And then right now we're showing one large electric room here. That's going to all depend on what systems we go with. If we go with an all electrified building and mechanical system, that would make sense. If we go with more of a gas fired heating system, then the electric room and mechanical rooms would switch, depending on which one needs the bigger space.
Matt, can you go back to the first floor for a second?
Yep.
So I think initially, when left field came in, one of the big savings they came back with was initially reducing the size of the training room, EOC room, and I think in doing so also the fitness room as well. And I know why that was done. Okay, I entirely know why that was done, so I bit my lip at that time. But as we get further down and look for efficiencies, I do think that training / EOC / community space is going to be probably the most
Used.
visible and utilized piece the community is going to be in and utilizing on a regular basis. I would just ask that as you continue through this process, if there's opportunities to get us back to some of those number of seats we initially talked about, and for future expansion, whether it's what flexibility should we, as things move to the second floor, maybe eventually the fitness center goes up where the members are living as opposed to having to be downstairs, and I don't want us to box ourselves into the training room is now blocked off by utilities and bathrooms and things that are kind of blocking you from further inching our way down. I guess I would just look for efficiency. I think that's going to be the thing that the community is going to see most is that training room. I don't know how many, to host is it District 7 that you're in? District 7 meeting, is that, really going to be at capacity before we even put every chief and deputy chief from the area in the room? I don't know how many seats are there. It's just, I guess I would ask as you look at it, take into consideration, maybe we can kind of get a few inches of that room back.
Yeah, right now we're showing 70 seats at tables and chairs. If you're holding a larger meeting and you took the tables out, you could probably, we can show you what that looks like. You probably get closer to 100 plus seats in there.
The occupancy requirements, we just want to be careful at, how that's all gonna come together.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind as well.
What was the requirements? I'm sorry.
The occupancy count, like, there's a certain occupancy count for every space before, like, it basically triggers another, requirement for that particular space. We just want to keep that mindful as well. So I want to comment on the exercise. Typically, exercise rooms don't go on the second floor for a number of different reasons. One, they try to keep them downstairs, just the noise levels. If there's weights or anything, I've been in stations where they have them on the second floor. The people below them hate it because all they hear is the weights hitting the floor, or the equipment, or vibration and noises. So that's typically the reasons why it's on there. Not to say the flexibility isn't gone, because as the station, progresses, if that space is needed for whatever purpose moving forward, you do have the flexibility of doing something different. So.
Are we, to his point though, the rooms that are just planned north here, what are those rooms of the training facility?
So we have a EOC conference room. We've got an AV room, just miscellaneous storage room, furniture storage. We've got a kitchenette, and then an EOC storage room.
So all relatively easy to reconfigure other than the elevator?
Yep.
If we were to
Yeah.
expand, or if the department wanted to expand north into that space.
The AV closet would be a little tough.
Where's the AV?
It's the
Right here.
audio visual on that left side center.
Okay.
And I don't think that's necessarily going to have like racking equipment in there or anything like that. It's going to be more or less
TV.
to run a virtual meeting or something
I'm not
like
saying
that. So
it's
similar to what we have here.
Just,
So that furniture storage, is that for extra chairs, or is that where these tables would be stored?
Chairs, tables, yeah.
Where the tables and chairs go to.
Oh, so all that furniture shown fits in that?
Yeah, because they fold up. I mean, I don't think it'll fit everything 100%, but
Right, it'll fit most of it.
majority of it.
And they go on, you know, you need the double doors in the extra room, even though everything folds up because it'll stack up onto dollies and you can roll it in.
You mean they didn't want ones that fold into the walls like the current station?
It's still available.
We'll bring them over.
Through the chair. Just to follow up on Mr. Kennedy's comment, because I want to make sure that I understand. So, Matt, what did you say the square footage reduction was right now? 830?
830.
So, what you're suggesting is that, like, we just saw another reduction of 830 square feet. So even if we were to roughly cut it in half, are you suggesting that we possibly look at maybe seeing what the square footage is to maybe bring that from 70 back to 100, which was the original plan? And I'm gonna make numbers up, but maybe that's 300 square feet. So you're suggesting that then we would maybe, we'd have a net reduction of 500 versus 800 because we were able to restore that room. Is that what you're?
Potentially, or future savings. And I realize an exterior wall savings probably is not the same as an interior program, because of roof and things of that nature, steel, but I guess I would like to see it come back a little bit if it was possible.
So Matt, is it possible to, like where the classroom is, you said that the whole building shifted north?
That's,
Basically from the lobby to plan to the
end
right.
wall, Yep.
right.
So from, basically we, the last time we showed you this, the building was out to here.
So,
To expand it, you'd have to take the plan left wall, exterior wall,
We
and
have to
push it
move
out
this out.
probably
Right.
to expand
Well, you could-
the
you could
seating.
or could you come back out like?
Well,
it would
they
look
didn't-
awkward if you came out.
There's no more room to
Okay.
expand this way, yeah.
Matt, how about just the meeting space and not the conference room?
It's possible.
And that would increase, tables and it's just when you make corners on any building, it adds cost.
Right.
That's all.
And I mean, as I look at this now too, I mean, I know ideally you have your EOC conference room right there, but as I look at the plan, I'm looking at, two other available conference rooms. With technology nowadays, everything that's going on in one can be seen, in another. Is that one really a nice to have or a need to have? Would the space be better utilized than a third conference room?
So Joe, your comment about the corners, so it would cost more if you didn't go all the way to the building, but if you just moved the whole corner out.
It would be like it just adds more value
Right.
for construction. Normally on an EOC, they like to have the conference space within a large meeting space in case they ever had a catastrophic event. Everybody's within one room rather than bouncing.
No, I understand
That's all. That's the reason why it's set up that way, more than anything.
So Matt, maybe we can look at, just running
A takeoff.
a rough takeoff to see bumping the wall out, the whole wall, 'cause to Joe's point, if we were to move the whole thing out, even from the EOC over, see how much square footage we would need to go back from a 70 to 100 room, or, maybe land somewhere in the middle. I mean, I think any reduction at this point is great. So, if we're at 830, but we get it down to 500, but we were able to restore something original, I think we're still in a good position. I mean, that's still
I might wait.
a $600,000 savings.
I might suggest we're going to be issuing our schematic design package in 6 or 7 weeks to the estimator to review it before making a move to add things back in.
Let's see what the numbers are.
I might see where the number is, and I can ask the estimator to tell us what the add back in would cost.
Yep.
Before you get into the DD.
Yeah.
So we'll take it under advisement. How's that sound?
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions?
Very good.
So we want to talk about a couple of things. Pre-qualifications, of the file subs are gonna happen no matter what, because we're gonna end up having to do that because it's over $10 million. So Connor and his team will be putting together some pre-qualification procurement process to not only advertise along with the town, but pre-qualify all of the file subs. Typically, there's 18 file subs. I don't know if all 18 will be used with this particular building, but we'll work with Matt and his team to identify exactly what that group is. We would probably engage a partial group of this committee to participate in that, just to review the qualification aspect of it. We give, a pretty thorough package to each of them and give them the information to make good decisions on that. Once that's done, all they are is they're awarded a letter saying that they pre-qualified for this particular project, and through our procurement process, we would let them know when that would occur. Okay? Just want to...
Joe, when do you do that, though, as compared to when the design's ready, or?
I like to pre-qualify fairly soon, and it puts all of the subcontractors on notice that the project's coming out and the timeline associated with it. We would do an estimated time of bidding to them so that it's all on their radar. And then periodically through that process, we would notify them that, the project's at wherever we are on the design, so that everybody's well prepared for it. Prior to actual finally going out to bid, we'll relook at their DCAM evaluation, make sure they're not over embellished on any one contract if they've been awarded projects since that point.
Joe, can I ask a question on that?
Yep.
So whoever the general contractor that is
Well, I'm going to get into that right
I
now.
just, it seems
There
like
is a
subs
gen,
be-
there
subs
is a
before
general,
general
yeah,
just seems-
no, there is a general contractor process, and it's going to come down to a couple of things, whether we're going 149A or 149 design bid build. And I'm,
But I guess my question was, do general contractors in commercial not necessarily bring their own subs or have their?
no, so that's a great question. There's 18 file subcontractors with the state Commonwealth of Mass. Those are pre-qualified, and they're subcontractors for their own entity. General contractors will have scope underneath them. It could be site, it could be a number of different things that they'll carry under them, but they're not a file sub. They're a subcontractor directly for the general contractor. We can't qualify those. We do have some input on, some of the site contractors that they've used in the past, to at least have some discussion whether we've had good luck or bad luck with them, and some of our concerns related to that. And we'll have that discussion as we move forward.
Thank you.
Okay. So the type of public construction and the delivery methods, we both talked about, and we had some lengthy discussions early on about the design bid build. It's 149. Traditional approach, once the bid documents are complete, we bid it. The lowest eligible responsive bidder is awarded the project. Contract is based on lump sum. Basically, they take all of the subcontractor values. They take whatever value they think the project's going to take to build under their contractors, and then provide a lump sum associated with it. There's another method, obviously, with the construction management and risk under 149A. The AG's office, as of last week, issued a notification to all firms that the procurement process for requests to go CM at risk is going to be a little more tighter as far as the requirements associated with it. And they kind of went down the parameter. It's not to say that they're going to limit it. They just are going to make sure that, when you apply, in the past, you would apply for it, give them a few reasons for it, and then they would either say yes or no, depending on the circumstances. They're going to look at it a little closer based on your requests and your requirements before they make the decision. A CM is hired early on. We typically like to bring them in before DD, like 50 to 60% of the drawings. They start to actually, the pre-involvement part of it is actually they get involved with some of the coordination and design features associated with the designer, to just look at the efficiencies, not only for the building, but the constructability of it. So that's one good aspect of it. CM at risk selection is qualification and proposal. So we would pre-qualify the CMs, and then we would actually interview them based on the teams that would come in, and then they provide a gross maximum price, it's a GMP. So basically, they work from the time they get in here under, shortly before design development, right through to construction documents. And through that process, they are putting a budget together associated with it. And at the end of the day, provide a gross maximum price for the project. There are it's open book accounting, which basically their numbers there, they have to show you. That includes some of the, and I call it protection, but CM is not going to take a lot of risk. They want to make sure they do it efficiently and build the building appropriately. So they carry some allowances associated with some of those. They call them, whether it's a misbuy or whether, there's a change order they feel may come out of a particular aspect, they may carry an allowance, that's all. The key differences between design bid build and risk management. Design bid build, you're purchasing a building in accordance with a set of plans and specifications, best suited for less complicated projects that are budget sensitive but not schedule sensitive and subject to change. Construction management risk, hired professional service, which the firms manage the construction of the buildings. Best suited for projects time sensitive, challenging, tough renovations are always good to utilize a CM at risk. New construction, I've had equal luck either way. I mean, a design bid build, if you pre-qualify and you get the right subcontractor and general contractor, you'll have a successful building. CM at risk on the other end of it is same, their level of oversight is early on, so they actually become one of the team of partners as you move forward through the design into construction. Any questions so far? Okay. The pros, design challenges easily accommodated prior to start of construction. Design to complete prior to construction award. That means that their team has enough time to really go through and put out a good set of documents. Construction cost is fixed at contract award. All that means is that we're getting a fixed price for this building. Any changes associated with that would be a change order, and we carried a contingency just to cover some of those incidentals. Our goal is to, with Matt's expertise and his teams, to try to capture any of the incidental changes as we move forward. Maximum owner control over design and construction. What that means is that, it's you have to say on the design to the designer and the OPM to make sure that we get your program that you're requiring as we move forward. And using the pre-qualification process limits, poor contractors from bidding this project. I've been through, 35 years in my career, and I've had, I'm going to say, a handful of contractors that, I don't know how they still do business in the Commonwealth. And they've made a project, a really good project, a very challenging, difficult one to get through. I've always gotten through to the finish line, but I had a full head of hair, I want to say, when I first started that process, and you can see what happened over the last 35 years. The cons, contractor doesn't have input on the design. They only start to really comment on it after they receive the contract and they start putting the building together. There's no planning or value engineering that they would typically implement. What I have worked with several contractors, if they've turned around and we meet with them early on to identify some potential changes so that we can capture them before an actual set of structural drawings go out to be secured and some details were done on that. So it all depends on the contractor you work with. Design and construction is sequential, limited ability for early packages because we have to identify them with design bid build. The contractor would not have the ability to do so. And limited pool of contractors that have DCAM capability. And what I mean by that is that depending on how many projects they were awarded or how many they've been successful in bidding, it changes and determines whether they financially have the capability to do the project moving forward. Construction manager at risk, the pros, the ability to pre-qualify and select the CM, and the team of individuals who you'll be working with. With a design bid build, you don't have that luxury. You don't know who you're getting for a superintendent or project manager. With a CM, you have the ability to interview and actually, not to say that wouldn't change some way or if there was staff moving around, but you have a little bit more control over that. CMs participate in the trade subcontractor pre-qualification process. They've worked with a bunch of them. They're going to tell you which ones they, are good and bad. And, even though the pre-qualification process, even though we're very thorough and we're rigid as far as our responsibilities and qualifications, they have the ability to appeal. If we turned around and didn't qualify a particular subcontractor, they can appeal it to the Attorney General and say, you know, they feel justifiably they are capable of it. And we have to go through that hearing and listen to them. As long as we do our due diligence and show our consistency as how we rated them and the reason why they scored appropriately, you know, the AG's office would work with us. The ability to fast track, well, first of all, they have better cost controls early, cost estimating, because they are estimating at the same time as well as Tecton and Left Field is. The estimates are reconciled as we go through each of the construction budget process. Fast track construction before design is completed. They may identify a few long lead items that, you know, we're well aware of now, but like switch gears and those type items that we want to make sure that we have the information and we move forward with that one way or the other. And CM's providing assistance with project phasing and logistics. They'll do a logistics plan on the site and tell you, you know, how they're going to do their laydown, how the structural steel will be played, where they're going to be setting up subcontractors so that the sequential work will be done appropriately and effectively. The cons on it: approval by the IG's office, which I told you has changed a little bit, and we'll have to go through that a little more clearly and concisely. Need clear definition of CM and AE roles. Cost of CM services include pre-construction, adds anywhere between 5 and 10% to the overall project. However, they also can save money on the contingency aspect of it if they catch in some of the design changes or construction details ahead of time. Contingency and allowance levels is a con. They as I indicated a little bit to you, they're going to put allowances in there to make sure that they're covering a lot of the bases, because there's not one contractor that I know of that like to go out there and take a risk to try to build a building. And the CM has, you know, little risk. And what I meant by that is they build in enough of these allowances and contingencies to make sure that they're successful as they move forward. Key advantages: team approach, and that's based on relationships, teamwork. CM's motivation to project success, future work, and references. And then cost reimbursement structure and fixed fee promotes CM to advocate to the owner. They will argue on behalf of us, and most good contractors will argue or try to argue on the owner's behalf if they feel it's justifiable. At times I've seen contractors, everybody's trying to make a dollar, and they try to push the change orders through. That's why you hire a great architect and OPM to make sure that we fight for you every tooth of the way. Cost factors: CM implement pre-construction to assist the design team, maintaining budget and optimizing value and constructability. Fees set at a contractor would. We're going to know what it's going to cost to build this building at X. There are going to be allowances, contingencies that will still go through that same process for a request to utilize or spend. Open book accounting, you know, once a month we're going to be going through budget, no different than any other contractor which we will be providing, and the ability to obtain the GMP early in on the process. Advantages with the CM at risk. We kind of went through. I'm not going to be repetitive there. Key advantages: the quality is typically caught a little earlier on, and they have some input as to the constructability and some of the details as you move forward for the design. There's not a time that I haven't seen where an architect and a CM have talked about different components of the building and maybe efficiencies in how they build it to create a better product as they move forward as a team effort more than anything. And the constructability just on the designing aspect of it. As the phasing of the construction goes through it, they're thinking through what the next steps are going to be and trying to implement that along with their designing logistics. The approval process: we got to obtain authorization from the governing body with the use of CMR method. Prepare application includes following information description, the risk of the project and the reason why we want to go CM. Plan and procedures at how the project will be managed, reporting and record-keeping systems, and project organization chart, and submission to the IG's office for approval. Pre-qualification: we're going to go through the same process we would with, and it's based on qualification basis, and then we ask for a price proposal for that, pre-process initially, and we talk that through based on the team and the level of effort that they're going to be putting through. And that's it. Questions?
You kind of skipped over the screen before, but you said, I think it's 60, nope, next one, right? Nope, forward.
Oh, forward.
IG has 60 days from receipt.
Yeah, so
That's
time we.
business days? So
That's a great question. So the answer is, if we were to do that, and Matt had alluded to this last meeting, we need to start on that sooner than later if we decided to go CM at risk.
No, I'm just trying to figure out in the overall, is that 2 months calendar days, or is that 3 months work days? How's it fit?
I'll verify.
You want it,
They don't typically work weekends, so
yeah. You want it to be before DD.
calendar days, right?
You want it to be before DD. And so how
Well,
are
I
we-
mean, ideally, you'd love to see them come in before DD. I've seen them come in at design development, but, the design has evolved quite a bit. It's not nearly complete. From design development to 100% documents, there's a lot of work that still
Yep.
has to be done.
But just on the overall schedule right now, where do we stand with, I know we were talking about 10 months time of design.
Matt's hitting
get us
right now.
to-
He hasn't waived or wavered from the dates that he's providing the documents right now, so.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. The pre-qualification interview process can happen concurrently with the IG's application?
The answer is, I believe so. You can't award, right, that's where I was gonna go with it. You could go through that whole process and then be denied, and that's the only negative side to that.
But only one project, I think, since 2004
Has been denied.
And that was for
Which-
very apparent reasons.
Yeah.
Contractor, general contractor can utilize either one of these, right? Depending, we decide the process of which one we're gonna go with. But contractors do utilize both, it just changes the rules
So
of the
no,
game?
the answer is no. There's only so many CM at-risk contractors out there that actually perform CM. There's going to be certain language and qualification requirements. Not a lot of general contractors have that capability. So first of all, this has evolved over the last 25, 30 years. More and more contractors would love to get into CM, but a lot of them already have a niche on it. So if they've done it 15 times, you lean towards the guy that's really good and efficient with it versus someone that's just breaking into the market for the first time. So it's sometimes difficult to get into that, project.
And can you just explain the one scary word out of that CM thing? What is the at-risk? Where is the risk?
My history is I call them CM at no risk because they
We use that term
and
as
I
well.
say that and it's not it's a CM at risk. So the risk is that they're putting a general maximum price for the project based on the completion of documents, and their risk is that they're saying that that's what it's going to cost to build. However, in their budget, there's allowances and some contingencies built into it, just like any other budget, that they kind of cover the incidentals that might be missed.
And if it goes the other way, where is the risk on them?
Yeah, you save the money. So the good news is if the allowances aren't used or the contingencies, it's your money. It comes
Right.
back to you. That's the open book accounting. So if an allowance of $300,000 for winter conditions was put in, which is probably going to be something of that nature, and they only use $50,000, $250,000 would come back to the town in your open book accounting.
Or just not get spent, basically, but yes,
Right.
gets reduced out of the budget.
You're identifying it, doesn't necessarily mean you're utilizing it.
In reading the bullets, the at-risk would be something you would not recommend to go with if you didn't have someone like yourself and your staff to do it. This would not be something independently you would probably latch onto. Is that?
So I've had a lot of success with CMs. When you get a good CM, you're pleasantly surprised with how the process goes through. I've had CMs that have struggled a little bit as well, to say the least. I've had general contractors under the design bid build do a phenomenal job and do a building very well. And I've had general contractors under design bid build that, like, I don't know how they stay in business. So, the good news is with the CM at risk, you have the ability to actually interview them and choose them based on their staffing and merit of how they're gonna do it. With a general contractor, when you bid it by completion of documents, you don't have that luxury other than pre-qualification requirements.
You said you've been doing this for, excuse me, I keep asking stuff. But this
Oh, that's okay.
It's all right.
So, to the chair, you said you've been doing this for 35 years. That CMR or law was only
149A versus 149.
2004, so it's only 20 years into it.
Yeah.
Why did they legislate or change that to put that in? What was the problem in the industry that
So
said
what
we
they
have to
what
go in a
they
different
found is that by having a contractor engage with the designer early on the design, the projects became more efficient and the construction quality was better. On the large complex phase projects, they were essential and ideal. A general contractor on a phase construction project that was very difficult would eat a designer up because there would be so many incidentals that they would say that they didn't own or the constructability wasn't there. So it became problematic. The IG's office realized that it was important on those type of projects to engage early on.
And my last question, for the moment anyhow, where does our project stand in terms of that complexity? level?
You're not there, you're new construction. So if the good news, you don't have a building on site. We've done a lot of geotech and test bits. We have, a survey that's been done. We know what the existing conditions are coming out. There's always a risk of undiscovered information as we move forward. Having the short period of time of working with Tecton, I'm not trying to toot his horn. I'm pleasantly surprised with the level of detail and the amount of effort he's put in just through the conceptual design already. So it all comes down to your designer, your OPM, whether you work with a design bid build and be successful.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Are we constrained on the procurement end? Have we looked at those variables more in depth? I know that obviously we don't have the mechanical electrical systems figured out, but when we start construction, if we go 149, how does that line up with our schedule with where stuff's at now?
So the pre-qualification, there's two questions you're asking right now. So there is 18 file subs. They're from schematic to design development. A lot of the details with the mechanical systems and building components are really going to be honed in. Right now, conceptually, they've said this is what they're looking to do. When those get identified, I think, their engineers of record, whether it's mechanical, electrical, controls, are all going to have some input on some challenging struggles that we've had or they are having. So it'll give us better clarity and identification of some of the things that we may have to, preliminarily do. And that may be some early package buyouts. And that might be a proprietary spec that we may have to look into. But that's something that Matt, his team, and us, along with the building committee, will have some candid conversation about. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and that doesn't, my point, that doesn't move us one way or the other.
No, it does
for
not.
the 149 or 149A. We can,
I would just say, I would caveat it with, if we go 149 design bid build, those early procurements may become more important than if we were doing CM at risk. Because the CM at risk would be able to say, in November, 3 or 4 months ahead of the filed sub bids, start buying some of those longer lead items out. We are going to have the responsibility as a group of figuring that out and doing that if we so need to. Otherwise, as Joe said, we have a little bit less control of the schedule when the GC comes in, because if we tell them it's going to be an 18-month construction and they're telling us they can't get a generator for 20 months, we're going to have a change order on the first day for 2 extra months of general conditions.
That's why we do those early buyouts. So we'll buy the generator ahead of time, but there's a process to do that procurement-wise.
I just want to reiterate the fact, I'm not a CM at risk fan. On my end, obviously I'm on the sub-file bid end, but I want to reiterate what you said about it. It's 5 to 10% cost higher with doing it as a 149. So just keep that in mind.
So to some subcontractors don't like the CM at risk, and there's a number of reasons why. One, that CMs typically use the same file subcontractors on a regular basis. Like there's a preferred group that they like to use. And at times, it's all about relationships and being able to work together as a team as you move forward. It sometimes minimizes the ability to there'll be file subcontractors, elevator contractors, electrical, that may, when we go through our pre-qualification process, they'll omit not having to work. They will not want to work with a couple of the general contractors because they've had bad practices with them in the past. So that changes dynamics at how we go through our procurement process. CM, typically it's a little bit more money because there's a pre-design phase that they charge you for, as well as some of the allowances, and 5 to 10%, depending on the complexity of the project, is an average. However, there is some savings on that, where hopefully they identify some of the potential changes in the design ahead of time before you bid. Design, bid, build, on the other end of it, you're getting the competitiveness. I've found with design, bid, build, you get sometimes better competitive bidding depending on the market.
And right now, the market is, the numbers
Yeah,
out
we're
there,
showing-
the
yeah, we're
numbers
showing-
are out there
yeah.
are tight, I tell you.
Well, we're showing some significant savings, believe it or not, right now, because what I've found over the last 3.5 weeks, and we've been talking about this all the way from New Hampshire, all the way down into Mass, is that the tariffs have set off a couple of things. It made every subcontractor and general contractor eager to line up the next 5 years worth of work, because they don't know what that final impact is going to be. We don't know what the tariff impacts are. We're seeing a little bit of it from the purchasing overseas coming over, and then we're seeing a little bit of a markup. But these contractors are trying to line up the next 5 years just to make sure that they have the revenue and they have the resources to be able to move forward. And so they're being aggressive with the pricing that they're going for. Yep.
If you go the 149 route, wouldn't there be similar allowances for like winter conditions?
So it's a good question. The 149, it's a lump sum. So they're going to figure in their bid all of the, so there's 18 file subcontractors. The general contractor is going to carry certain allowances under his price to carry winter conditions. It could be site. It could, a number of different avenues that at times I've seen general contractors carry, nothing for particular winter conditions because they want to win the bid, and then they have an instrumental, bad winter, and they go after the owner for excessive snow, and that's something we argue about because there's an average in the Northeast is an average snowfall, and just because we went 3 inches over doesn't necessarily mean it was a bad winter. Those are the type of conversations that we'll have as we move forward.
The Chapter 149, the actual law requires winter conditions be carried by subcontractors that are subject to it. So
Right.
it has to be built into the contract documents.
But it's the same thing where if they don't use it, it goes back.
No, it does
If they don't
not.
use it in a GC bid, it just goes in their pocket.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't plow. They keep the money.
Conversely, what we can do to create more of an open book scenario in a GC hard bid is we can develop unit prices for a lot of these things where we say, often, penetrations through structural steel, winter conditions, cleanup, things like that, touch-ups. We can say the general contractor is gonna put into their bid a price to do a unit of that construction, and in their base bid, we want them to own this many units of that. And then we adjust, as they utilize that, we adjust by change order at that negotiated value. And if that doesn't get utilized, then it does return back as a credit to the owner.
But we have that to Matt's point, that's a lot more work on us to make sure that, they're not embellishing any numbers as we move forward, that's all.
There will be a lot of them in the contract, especially with site-related
Yeah.
stuff,
Ledge,
board
rock.
fill,
Yep.
structural fill, things like that.
All that.
Yep.
Mark, on the middle school, what approach did we use?
We see them at risk. That's my background.
Yeah.
is being at CM at risk for a lot of years. It's coming from the CM world, but as part of the whole design, bid, build, general, and file sub bids and stuff. Even though file sub bids, you put packages together, in the design bid build, and plumbing goes out, and it's plans and specs. It's what's on the plans, it's what's in the specs, and if it's not listed as a 15400 or whatever the number is these days, it's, they don't own it. They could still show a fixture there, but if it's not flagged and stuff, it doesn't happen. So it's, there's onus on the design team and OPMs and stuff to make sure all those are flagged. And then the GC, so all these file sub bids come in, and the GCs bid on it, and they have all these packages of file sub bids, and they decide from those who they want to use, and then they put their number together, lump sum, and they put, like I said, they'll put their own contingencies in. If they don't use them, they walk away with them, and that's it. Hopefully the job goes well, or could go longer because you don't have as much schedule control. On CM at risk, the 149A, you still have to bid the file sub bid job contractors separately, but the CM gets to write scopes of work so that they can make sure
The D-scope.
to make sure that they get better scope coverage from those file sub bidders and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, but if that fixture's still not listed, and
You
either
still
way-
don't own it, right?
Either way, I still don't own it.
Yeah, you still don't own it.
Doesn't
But
matter
it's
which
but
one it
but
is.
on the file sub bid, it actually has to be flagged out and pulled out on a.
So in theory, correct. However, I've had mechanical subs and electrical subs that they may show a access control to a door, but there's no wire to it. They can flag that it's not there, but it's still a cost, an increased cost of the project for that. I mean, I've seen it both ways. So where we've been able to really say, listen, the intent of the drawing was to have a toilet there. That meant there should have been a water line going to it and a sewer line. In theory, right? There's been sometimes a contractor will turn around and say, well, it's not on the drawings. You can't hold me accountable. And those are the numbers that we provide. And that's part of the candid conversations that we have. I mean, I've been in a number of change order discussion meetings, and it's gone both ways.
I think under CM at risk, we have tighter control on schedule, definitely.
You on schedule, absolutely.
And time is money.
Yeah,
And if
18
we-
months
if
is
the-
what we're giving
if
the contractors right now. That's what based on these drawings, and that used to be 14 months, but because we've ran into some purchasing issues as we move forward, and the biggest thing, and I think I said this a long time ago, was that one of the challenges that general contractors in theory are having is that they used to have 15 carpenters under them, and now they have 5. So now they're bidding these projects at 18 months. They realize they only have 5 instead of 15. Everything's double time or time and a half. So they're adding more value to that. What they were arguing is saying to do it in the 14 months, we can't do that. So a lot of subcontractors and general contractors are saying we can't do it in 14. We need 18 months to do this based on market conditions. And so I think architects and OPMs have looked at that overall and said, listen, if it's 18 months and we know it's 12 months to get a generator, we knew it was impossible to do. So we're being more realistic as we show those timelines, especially schedule-wise now. I learned my lessons quick.
This isn't a big fancy building either.
No, it's
So it's a pretty basic,
it's a beautiful building.
it is absolutely beautiful. But I think that for construction-wise, it's not.
Not complex.
Exactly.
Yep, there's going to be a half a dozen to 8 general contractors that do fire stations really well. And there's probably a half a dozen to 10 CMs that have done fire stations real well. So we're going to pre-qualify, and qualify both of them, stringently so that everybody feels comfortable.
And in going with the CM, it takes out some of those options where, as not a CM, any contractor can bid it. Whether they choose to or not is up to them.
As long as they're pre-qualified.
It's still
right,
pre-qualified
right.
on the
Right.
on the file sub bid trades.
That's correct.
But that doesn't disqualify them from being able to get pre-qualified.
Right. For the CM at risk.
Another question to the chair. Payment-wise, so the voters approved up to, a certain dollar amount. How does the contract, either one of these, how are they paid? Are they paid at the conclusion of the project?
No, we pay them, the requisition happens once a month. So a requisition will come to both Matt and I, we'll scrutinize it to no end. We verify through our on-site rep to make sure that, you know, the scope of work, saying they're completed and the materials on site are actually there. We'll go through, you know, all of the line, I mean, I try to limit under $25,000. I like to see the requisition. These requisitions can be 28 pages, 30 pages long of each of the file subcontractor and the general contractor's requirements. It's really itemized and detailed. It can be by the floor. I mean, we really go through a strategic method of making sure that we can track this appropriately.
So the only procurement efficiencies out of the CM at risk is that they're on the project earlier and potentially could order things earlier.
And identify some, you know, they partner up with the designer and the town and the OPM, CM at risk. A design bid build is actually getting a set of documents. They don't have the luxury to see it ahead of time, but they do their due diligence to look at, you know, prior to their bids. The good news is when this goes out on Project Argo, however we, you know, secure the advertisement, they're going to have the drawings for a few weeks in advance. Matt's going to get inundated with, you know, nonsense questions and some good questions.
Mostly nonsense.
Yeah, and so that being said, it's just clarification, but they are doing their due diligence to look at, you know, and part of, it doesn't matter whether it's a file sub for a CM or a file sub for a general contractor. My biggest pet peeve is that I like to have a contractor, if there's something not on the drawings, let us know now prior to the final bid so they can price it appropriately, instead of like not saying something and then we're arguing over, you know, a cost after the fact. The efficiency, you talk about schedule, the efficiency on, you know, going through a change order for 2.5 weeks, you lose time. And so we're very effective of what is the issue, let's identify what it is, and let's come to a conclusion so we can continue. There will be change orders on this, and it may not all be design issues at all. It may be owner, it may be inspector, it may be a number of different reasons why it's happening. So, but we'll identify that, we track it appropriately, and we're going to move forward. This project's going to be done, it's going to be a successful project, and it's going to be a building Auburn will be proud of for many years. On either method. But I would want the committee to formally vote one way or the other, because we have to get moving one way or the other.
Is there a way to move in both directions?
No.
Okay.
Was that a quick answer?
We have to make that vote tonight.
Preferably, yes, because I want to make sure I give my team and including Matt that provision of the direction that we're going to go as far as, you know, the requirements, the procurement, and all of that.
I mean, as someone who, like, my whole career has been CM at risk, all my jobs, typically their jobs, like Joe mentioned before, they have really tight logistical constraints. So we're trying to figure out how the job's actually going to be done. This job's not that, right?
Oh.
We have a block. We have to fit the building in the block, and there's nothing really complicated about that.
You actually have laydown area in this
You have
way.
laydown area, parking.
Storage,
It's
yeah.
it's a Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah. Or if there's
I want this job every time.
a lot of unforeseens too, right? Jobs where the owner's trying to figure out how to weigh out those risks. They'll go with CM at risk, but this job we really don't have. We know
Right.
the ground's good, right? We might run into some boulders here and there, but sounds like procurement, right? And thinking about an 18-month schedule, right? Even the generator at 20 weeks on some of this stuff is not something that we can't manage. So with that, right, a lot of the onus now is on the, you know, our side and on design to get it right the first time before it goes out. Once it's out, it's out. So even though it feels comfortable, there's still a benefit to going CM at risk, right? There's still the cost management. We can choose somebody, right? Now, speaking as someone who's doing CM at risk now, right? A little biased, but someone who can control the cost up front, right? Kind of see those unforeseens that we might not be, you know, seeing, and it might shelter the town a little bit from that at a premium of 5 to 10%. But 5 to 10%, do we think that that's gonna outweigh the cost? You got a couple bad filed sub bids that get through the process that could eat into, $1 million plus right off the bat.
But you can get that on either one. You just, so it doesn't matter.
Right. The only benefit in my mind, CMR risk, is like we have the option to choose that. But, understanding that this job isn't complicated right off the bat, that we have a team that's done this, right? We chose a OPM and an architect that this is what they do. I tend to, tend more to what Heather was saying, right? 149 feels like the right position for us to be in.
Joe, do you have a
You know what? I would love to give you my opinion, but I cannot.
Yeah.
Make
I-
a motion that we do design bid build, chapter 149.
Second.
All right. I put it out there. I'm still worried about some of the big pieces on this project, and that's the exterior wall and ceiling and roofs and stuff that are going to could be cost issues. And you won't know that. I mean, we'll go through some estimates and get there, but we won't know really until we go out to bid. And unfortunately, that's one of the big filed sub bids. In terms of cost exposure, that's one of the, and timing. I like the schedule. I mean, time is money. If we can get the job done faster, that's less construction financing, more, back into the, normal financing, which is cheaper and stuff. So
So the good news on some of those items that you listed, prior to having the construction documents done, we're going to be going through several more estimates on that. And it's not just a matter of, what our estimates think the average costs are with that. We're checking with actual manufacturers of roofing material and finding if there's a cost increase on any particular item. And not only that, we identify, an alternative to a particular product if we find that, numbers are high. We call it value engineering. It's more than that. It's more of identification of what the cost implications are and what we can do to make sure that we're still hitting our quality of this building but reducing the costs. That's what it comes down to. So, and Matt's team will, they'll be knee deep in all of that as we move through each of those trades. I can tell you that much.
any other comments, discussions before we look? We have a motion and a second for going design bid build, but any other discussions or comments before we take a vote?
Question in the back.
Just on the motion, I think we go the other way. I think it adds another layer. I trust this team. I feel like they're working well together. I don't know that we need another person kind of overseeing something or paying more money for that. There's enough, experience even on the board. If something comes up, we'll just deal with it. I don't see the benefit. Like you said, it's pretty simple. There's been a lot of homework done, to this point. I know how I'm voting.
So I just want to comment on that as well. One of the things that I'd like to see, and I'm going to look into and maybe speak with the IG's office on the pre-qualifications, is, previous experience in scoring them appropriately moving forward. Because if we've had some general contractors do some fire stations and they were horrific, I want to be able to put a hard number against that as far as the scoring criteria to ensure that we're not repeating that with the town of Auburn. It's that simple. So I want to look into like that scoring matrix, that how we can make sure that we're marking that appropriately, but staying within our procurement regulations and requirements. So.
Okay. Any other comments, questions before we vote?
Can we repeat the motion?
So the motion was to go design bid build, which is the file sub bids, then getting a lump sum contract from a general contractor
With pre-qualifications.
with pre-qualifications. That was the motion and seconded. If there's no other discussions, then I guess we'll open the vote. So all those in favor of going to design bid build?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Count, but
Okay,
hopefully you
thank you.
The first contentious vote.
So the next item I wanted to discuss is there's some procurement things that we're gonna, the pre-qualification process, why don't I talk about that a little bit? We're going to go, and I was just talking to Matt a little bit, over the next few days, we're gonna talk about the scoring matrix in that process. I'll provide a one-page sheet to the committee, and you may want to identify a couple of committee members to be participating in the pre-qualification process, and then we'll bring that package back to the committee for a formal vote as we move forward. All right?
What's the recommended size of that group that you found?
You want to keep it under a quorum. How's that sound?
That's good.
Because if you have that, then we're posting every single time, okay?
Just to
And-
give you guys a sense on the lift of that effort. So we'll probably receive 100 to 125
You're
qualification
giving them a heads up.
packages.
We're just giving you a...
Each package is about, I don't know, 15 to 20 pages for
Yeah.
their qualifications, and there's like a dozen categories that you have to go through each one and assign a score to. And
We'll give you
we'll set
that
up the
matrix,
criteria
yeah.
that makes that easy. The biggest lift is then you have to go and seek references for each of those 100 to 120 subcontractors, and you need to get at least 3 references returned to you. That's the challenge, because you make phone calls, you send emails, and people don't respond. So you end up seeking 5, 10, 15 references for some subcontractors, and you have to keep going until you get those 3. AG's office has given direction on that previously. So
Yep.
the biggest lift is going through the document and then calling references, and that's something that sort of everybody sort of shares the load on.
And that's gonna happen on either CMA or 149, so whoever volunteers for that, we will buy coffee for you. The geotech, we have, now that, there's a couple of things. The survey, I want to thank the chief for getting that over to me, and I get it over to Tectum. He's got it with his team right now, just looking over content. If there's any other items or any other localities or where you want a pit or something done, we're going to work closely with the Department of Public Works and the geotech to make sure that that happens ahead of time.
Yeah, I think before we go forward with anything additional on that, let's wait till my structural engineer lays out his
Yep.
first grid, and then we'll take a peek at it.
On the
again.
survey.
Yep.
And we talked about, there were 2 other components in it. You were talking design, and I want to just bring it up under new business. The testing procurement, we're gonna go through an RFQ for a request for testing. That's concrete, structural steel, pull tests on roof. We'll go through, there'll be probably 4 or 5 firms that'll submit. We'll give you those firms with the recommendation at what, it'll be pricing associated with it, so we all know what it is. We have a budget set aside for that. We're just gonna track it based on the entity and requirement as we move forward. And we'll give you a recommendation as to what group that we think you should go for based on those numbers. Okay?
Joe, let me get you a draft statement of special inspection. So you
That'd be
know
great.
some of the other things.
Yep, and we'll include that as part of the.
I haven't developed it for this, but I'll send you one from another project that you can use.
Yep. And I'll marry it with the ones that we got.
Yep.
The other thing, we talked, and I talked with the chief briefly, and just so the committee knows, we're meeting with Tectum once a week, we're meeting with the chief once a week, and we meet internally once a week. And it's to keep the continuity and flow of this project and the deliverables and the items of action that, so it's all fresh on everybody's mind. When I get off the phone with Matt on a Tuesday, he's got things he's got to do. We're doing stuff in conjunction with, and then I meet with the chief shortly thereafter and their team to just kind of go over and let him know, where we're at, what we're thinking. One of those topics was electric charging stations within the apparatus for future electric fire trucks. That's something that, I want to make sure we coordinate with the utility company for the load that's actually being provided through the electrical engineer, and we provide the space within, the apparatus. We'll be talking about that a little bit more in detail as we move forward.
You're gonna have to
But-
quadruple the size of the electric room.
But I'm just saying, those are the things that ongoing behind the scenes that you don't know about, but we'll be bringing it to your attention as we move forward on that. And then the Peace Garden, that whole logistics, we talked a little bit about the layout and the swing and the radiuses. We're going to be looking at that a little closer because that was some of the comments that were made about some of the traffic flows going into the roadway and how they access. So we're going to look at that a little closer. As much as we looked at the efficiency, we want to look at the site as well for those same type of items. And then the only other one I had a question on is it's not a DOT road, right? All right, great.
Not Prospect Street, but Washington and Southbridge are.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that if there's entities that we need to reach out through your civil engineer, we're at least having that conversation.
Yeah, for Washington Street, we will have curb cut modifications.
Right.
that we'll have to submit.
So, and that takes time. That's why I'm bringing it up now.
Well, you have the curb cut, plus there was
Lights.
discussions about, the control of the lights, and then there's also the discussion about possibly widening Prospect Street some, if we take some of the land or at the corner there and stuff, and that's going to directly involve DOT on Washington
Yep.
Route 20.
That's the reason why I was
The
bringing it up.
signal
now.
box is on that same corner too, to
Right.
control the traffic signals.
If we go down that route, that'll run as a parallel project, separate procurement, all that, because that'll be horizontal construction, so we'll bid that through 3039M. So that'll be,
Horizontal construction.
yeah, so that'll be a totally separate project.
We got to talk about how that gets funded as well. Okay. And that's all I got. Any questions?
Next item was just a general committee discussion topics or whatever, if there's anything else. I know we covered a lot tonight. If not, we can move on. Public comment. Oh, do you have something?
Sorry, I just have a quick question. And during the design process, is the design reviewed with the town inspectors, like the building inspector and the electric? It is, okay.
Well, it will be, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
There's a turn page that happens. And
Yeah,
we'll
so-
actually send a set of drawings over there for them to actually take a look at ahead of that turn page, so that, just in case they have any, follow-up stuff with them.
Yeah, so we'll do, when we get into design development, we'll do an initial code analysis, and then we'll bring that to the inspectors and have a meeting with them after they've done an initial review. We'll do that again before we submit the bid documents to make sure we've captured, because inspectors, all the EHJs, they have their own interpretations of the code or things that are above and beyond the code that they like to see and things like that. So we want to make sure we get ahead of that, so that when they're there doing their periodic inspections, that we're not generating a bunch of change orders on their behalf.
Correct. And then, even with the fire department alerting system, we want to know ahead of time, early on, what they're looking for with locality of it, so that, not only the electrical and the infrastructure and the conduit, that, we're placing it appropriately.
And the plumbing inspector is one of the first ones, because we have to establish the building population so that we can define the plumbing count, so that'll be one of our first discussions.
And so,
That's it. Where do we stand with plumbing, zoning and planning? Does that need to be reviewed?
We'll be in conformance with zoning, but we'll certainly submit and give them an update and let them know what we're doing.
we may do a courtesy review just ahead of time, just so, before we get to design development, it's always nice to be able to take what you have there, do your first layout and get some feedback, so that when they do the final submission, we're good to go.
Yeah, well, we also will probably have some work, some grading work and some site work within the buffer too, so we'll probably have an NOI with the Conservation Commission. And then we also abut the 100-year floodplain, so there may be an NOI that has to be filed with that as well. Notice of intent.
Matt, what about stubs from getting the stubs onto the property on the street earlier? Is that something that maybe we work with? Would the Department of Public Works do that work?
For the.
Water
like
taps,
water
the
and
sprinkler, fire protection and the water and,
sewer. I don't know, does the water.
Aren't there any-
Oh, water district is separate. That they're a quasi-state agency, so it's separate from the town.
very similar
And
to
they
Northbridge.
normally contract that.
All right, so I'm just thinking if we had it stubbed on site, gas company, same thing, but anyway, okay.
And then power is Eversource.
Yeah, I want to jump on that sooner
We
than
don't
later
have
too.
gas here, remember?
Oh,
There is
not-
sewer stubbed on
National
site
Grid.
already, but it's probably not the right size.
That's the grid.
It's,
yeah.
it's stubbed from when
Well.
Chuck's was there.
These are all things that, like, we talk about weekly, but these are things that I want to make sure that if we can jump on ahead of time, we try to stay on top of it. That's all.
Yeah, I imagine with National Grid, we're gonna have load letters to them in a couple of months and start that whole process, you know.
Schedule.
The engineering takes forever through the
Yeah.
utility companies.
Unfortunately.
Are there, the poles are on our side of the street, right?
It doesn't matter, they're gonna do engineering anyway.
No, but if we haven't, do we have relocations to do?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
poles are on our side of the street.
The relocations take forever, so you start now.
And my guess is they're probably gonna want that underground instead of going to the other side of the street, so
Yeah.
that's a possibility.
And I've never met a public safety building that we've done that didn't have the right enough pole capacity to get all the conduits that we need to bring the primaries.
Some more
in.
poles are
So
needed.
We often need another pole just to bring the conduit down.
And that's communications, everything, so there's only, the 4 is allowed on a pole, so if you needed 8 or 10, you know, you can imagine how many
The
poles.
drops
we
on
need.
it, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Wood sticks only hold so much pole.
Okay.
Very good questions, though.
Is there a way to tell if you need the amplifier, the bidirectional amplifier, before the building's built?
No, unfortunately, it's all the steel, brick, and glass that interfere with the signals, so
So that would be something that would be like an allowance?
we typically put it into the contract.
PDA?
More often than not, it'll be
needed.
required, so we'll put it into the contract, and if we don't need it because of testing, we'll pull that back with a credit.
I've yet to see it not needed in a brick building, so.
Yeah. I just brought a fire station online that didn't need it, we got lucky.
I'm impressed.
So,
But we can write that as a unit cost so that they can put that big number into the documents. Because when you ask for it
It's
as
like
a change
30
order, it'll be $40,000. When you ask for it as a credit, it'll be 10.
Yeah.
It's magic how that happens.
So for those that don't know the question that was just asked, the BDA is the bidirectional amplifier. So under the building code, every building that is constructed requires that police and fire radios are able to transmit from inside the building and be able to reach their communication.
They don't want dead zones.
So, I'm not gonna say that it's not going to be needed. However, the new 40B development off of Albert Street, because one of our sites is Prospect Street, now granted, those are not brick buildings, but they were able to skirt the BDA requirement by making some other alterations in terms of a simulcast site versus a full BDA. So we're gonna have to talk to our radio engineer because we may be better off instead of actually putting a BDA into the building, which is essentially, it's a lot of wiring. It's a lot of
Antenna.
cabling and antenna. We may be better off, and it's a cheaper option, just for us to put a secondary, just to put a
Repeater.
simulcast
Yep.
site there, which will be a whole lot cheaper than actually equipping with a BDA. So I think we have a couple of options that we'll probably be able to, if it doesn't pass just because of where it is on Prospect Street, and we have to do some modifications, I think we can do a much cheaper modification with another simulcast site versus installing a BDA.
So
Much
to that
cheaper
point, we're
cost.
not gonna be able to test the building for the BDA requirements till the shell is up and the doors and everything else is
Right.
on. So, you know, if that's the case, I wouldn't mind looking at the second option and the cost, viable cost associated with it.
I can tell you that that's the deal we worked out with the contractor. I mean, he passed anyway, but he was willing to kind of assist with some modifications, and because what he was gonna have to do for his 12 buildings in terms of BDA, for a fraction of the cost, he is putting in another simulcast site, which is gonna enhance the town's radio system, and it's still gonna provide them with what they need, but it's a fraction of the cost.
Work in progress.
Great. Any other questions, comments? All right, last agenda item is the public comment. I don't see any public here, so we're on. So right now, tentatively, I have the next meeting for 6:30, 2 weeks away. Do we need that one? We probably should hold that for the contract amendments.
Yes.
I mean, does the committee vote on it all, or no?
Mr. Chairman, what, does the committee, I mean, I don't think it's a bad matter of practice. Does the committee want to formally vote the contracts for Tecton and Left Field? The manager is doing a cursory review right now just to see if there's anything before it comes here, but it's probably not a bad idea if the committee reviews the contract and then take a formal vote on it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that's what we were doing, but without it coming, we haven't seen him yet, so we have.
It's in the
Right.
manager's office for review.
Yeah, they go through legal first before it goes.
That's, I was just wondering if we're gonna have it back in time before
I think
we meet on the 30th, if
I
we,
believe you will.
okay.
I think that sort of brings up a philosophical question, though, is that we should still maintain that oversight authority, I guess, for lack of a better term, right? So I think it is, on us to sort of be the watchdog, monitor over what the town is doing, what the, what our partners are doing, and at least, do a review, do a vote.
So, yes, the answer is yes, the 30th we'll have a meeting.
Okay. So, if there's nothing else, then,
Just as means of agenda, did you want to formally establish whatever that subgroup is at that meeting as well? Maybe.
On the 30th. I'm giving you something to digest this next couple
No, I
of weeks.
understand, but at least at that 30th, we'd have it on the agenda, people can,
Yeah, we'll have
people
it
can
on
put their
there.
names into you, Mark, or something separately, so that'd be interesting. We can just say, these are the, whatever the, under
It's
the
always
quorum.
great to nominate someone too, by the way.
and
Nominate me.
Not here.
I was gonna say, who's not here? That's usually how it works.
Hey, win-win.
Selling my boss.
and on a separate note, if you got calls or not yet from the town manager's office, but we all have to get if you're staying on, you have to get re-sworn in before the 30, or by the 30th.
Just as a point on that, so I went to the town hall, and apparently I had not responded to the town manager's office to formally say I was interested,
Okay.
in which the town manager reviews and then notifies the clerk that you're now ready to be sworn in, so.
Oh, they
I
called-
just
they
got-
called me today.
They just called me
but
today,
I
so
went
yeah.
last week and said, oh, I'm.
Oh, okay,
I'm ready to get
you went
sworn in.
early.
I'm like, no, you're one step ahead of the process. You gotta go back a step.
So,
I love it.
But yeah, according to the letter, yesterday was the first day you could do it. Of course, they weren't open.
Yeah.
okay. So with that, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, we're done. See you on the 30th. Thank you.
all.